Every morning, there are about 40 seconds that quietly decide your entire day. Your alarm goes off, your eyes open, and before you can have a single conscious thought, a part of your brain has already calculated everything. The cold floor, the long day ahead, or the thing you once swore you would finally get done no matter what. And it has already made the decision for you. Your hand automatically reaches out to the alarm and turns it off. You tell yourself, just 10 more minutes, I'll make up for it later. And then just 40 seconds later, you fall back asleep. You have lost a battle you weren't even awake enough to participate in. Except you don't make up for it. Around noon, the guilt sets in. You open a new tab on your browser. You start looking for videos on self-discipline again. You pull out your notebook and write down a new plan, this time with even neater handwriting than the last. And things go smoothly for about 3 days. Then you're back to square one. In the end, you find yourself in the exact same situation with the exact same thought. What is wrong with me? People will tell you it's because you lack ambition. They will say you're weak. If you want to succeed, you have to toughen up. You have to push yourself past your limits. But there is one thing almost nobody tells you, and it is the exact reason why building discipline feels brutally hard for you, yet smooth and natural for others. Highly disciplined people are not better at forcing themselves. In fact, they rarely have to force themselves at all. Today on Deep Shift, we will analyze what discipline actually is inside your brain, why your nervous system has been quietly conditioned to hate it, and 5 specific ways you can trick that very brain into wanting the exact thing it currently avoids. Not through motivation, nor through pressure, but through conditioning. Let's dive in. Take a look at a groundbreaking 2012 study led by psychologists Wilhelm Hoffman and Roy Baumeister. They tracked hundreds of people in their daily lives to measure their cravings and their efforts to resist temptation. If discipline were truly about willpower and mental strength, then the most disciplined people should be the ones fighting back the hardest, right? But the results were the exact opposite. The people who scored highest in self-control were actually the ones who experienced the least inner conflict and had to force themselves the least. They weren't winning the fight. They simply never entered it in the first place. What does this mean? It means that for years you have been practicing the wrong skill. You have been gritting your teeth, tensing your muscles, and draining your energy for a game where the rules were stacked against you from the start. Why does your brain hate discipline so much? Because you accidentally trained it to hate effort. Think back to how we grew up in an outcome-obsessed society. Hustle culture. When you were a child, when did you receive praise, hugs, and pride from your parents or teachers? When you brought home a straight-A report card. When you brought home a trophy. When you finished a project. Everyone celebrated at the finish line. But what about the 3 weeks of restless, tedious, exhausting, and unglamorous work before that? Nobody celebrated that. Your nervous system drew an extremely logical lesson. Effort is a painful tax you pay to buy a reward. And if you were a naturally smart kid, it was even worse. You got good grades without studying. You were praised for not even having to try. As a result, effort became proof of failure, meaning that if you had to try, it proved you weren't as smart as people thought. Consequently, when you grew up, the moment a task became tough, your entire inner identity winced, and you looked for a way to close your laptop before anyone realized you weren't perfect. But the greatest tragedy is what you are doing right now. Every time you force yourself to work through exhaustion, writing a few lines, while mentally cursing yourself, why am I so slow? Why am I so terrible? You have just completed a step of reverse conditioning. You forced your brain to record that effort equals punishment and feeling awful about myself. The harder you try through self-torment, the deeper you carve the scar of aversion into your brain. You don't have a discipline problem. You have a prediction problem. To fix your brain, you have to understand the fuel that runs it. Dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, the thing you get after eating a piece of cake or finishing a task. But in the 1990s, neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz discovered a truth that transformed the entire field of psychology. When he trained animals to recognize a light signal before being fed, something remarkable happened. The spike in dopamine no longer occurred when the food arrived. It moved backward in time, firing the exact moment the light turned on. Dopamine is not the reward. Dopamine is the anticipation of the reward. It detaches from the prize and attaches itself to whatever signal accurately predicts that prize. That is why when your hand reaches out to pick up your phone, you feel a pleasant sense of relief even before you unlock the screen. Your brain has run that loop 10,000 times. Phone equals promised pleasure. Now, ask yourself a ruthless question. When you look at your planner or open a blank document, what does your brain predict? Stress, criticism, and the realization of just how far behind you really are. So, your brain performs its exact biological function. It avoids it. But here is the good news. Every prediction can be rewritten. In 1992, researcher Robert Eisenberger introduced a concept called learned industriousness. At its core, effort is not just a mental decision. Effort is a physical sensation. It has a distinct texture inside your body. It is that heavy feeling in your chest right before you call a tough client. It is the tension behind your eyes when you stare at a blank screen. It is that overwhelming pull dragging you away from your desk. And because effort is a sensation, it can be fully conditioned. Exactly like training your tongue to get used to the spicy taste of chili peppers. Have you ever seen gym addicts? They lift heavy weights, wincing in discomfort, their bodies aching, yet they are thrilled. Why? It's not because they are crazy. It's because their brain has linked that muscle soreness to the feeling of victory. It is just like climbing a mountain. If it were only about the view from the top, people would just take a cable car. Yet people still choose to hike with blistering feet and gasping for breath, because that very struggle is what makes the view from the top far more precious. When effort is repeatedly paired with an immediate reward, the heavy sensation of effort itself begins to carry the value of the reward. The painful feeling stops being a signal of punishment and becomes a signal that something amazing is coming. You cannot force yourself to like discipline through sheer thought, just as you cannot order your nose to find a bad odor pleasant. Motivation is merely the weather sunny today, rainy tomorrow. What we are building is not willpower, but new associations. Here are 5 concrete levers to rewire your brain's prediction system. Lever 1. Reward effort, not outcomes. Stop tying your rewards to results. Outcomes come slowly, are uncertain, and are beyond your control. The moment you finish a 25-minute work session, before you even judge whether you did well or poorly, mark it down, check off the box. Say out loud, I showed up. The reward must appear within seconds of the effort ending. Your ego will hate this. It will tell you why reward such an ordinary result. But remember, you aren't grading performance, you are conditioning your nervous system. Lever 2. Place the reward right at the entrance. Temptation bundling. Instead of using the reward as the finish line at the end of the road, bring it straight to the front door. A famous 2014 study by Catherine Milkman at the University of Pennsylvania showed that when people were only allowed to listen to gripping audiobooks while at the gym attendance skyrocketed by 50%. The gym was no longer a price to pay, but the only place containing something wonderful. How I usually apply this is simple. I am only allowed to drink my absolute favorite gourmet coffee when I sit down at my desk to work. However, remember the golden rule when doing this: exclusivity. If you can drink that coffee anywhere else, it will predict nothing. Lever 3. Shrink the entrance until resistance becomes absurd. Your brain doesn't resist the work itself. It resists the expected size of the work. The command finish writing a chapter triggers avoidance. But the command open the document and write just one sentence does not, because there is nothing there for your brain to fear. Shrink your commitment down to 2 minutes, 1 page, 1 push-up, and that is your entire obligation. If you stop right there, you still win. Research from University College London 2010 shows that habits are formed through repetition within a specific context. It doesn't matter whether you do a lot or a little. What matters is that the repetitive chain remains unbroken. A single slip-up doesn't ruin your progress, only giving up completely does. Lever 4. Design the environment. Instead of draining your resolve, remember Hoffman's study? The most disciplined people are not those who are best at resisting temptation. They are the ones who encounter temptation the least. They proactively choose a quiet room before studying. They put their phones in another room rather than placing them face down on the desk. They delete apps instead of staring at them and forcing themselves to resist. Every environmental decision you make while alert and calm is a battle that your tired 11 p.m. self will never have to fight. Don't test your willpower. Clean up your environment. Lever 5. Never end on a failure. The last 30 seconds of any experience are what your brain will store in its archive. Never close your laptop right in the middle of feeling stuck or panicking over an unfinished task. Never end a workout on a failed pull-up attempt. Deliberately end on a small action you are guaranteed to complete. Write one final complete sentence. Clear off your desk. Perform one gentle repetition. And stop right there while the feeling is still pleasant. You are writing the final line of the memoir that your nervous system will read back tomorrow morning. Make it a win. The final thing I want to remind you of is this. Hard things are still going to be hard. A heavy weight is still going to be heavy. The reality is that the difficulty of the task does not decrease. But what will disappear is the civil war inside your head. That 40-second struggle every morning, that internal courtroom constantly judging you every time you sit at your desk, that tormenting question, am I just lazy? All of that will fall silent. Effort will no longer be a punishment. It becomes a physical sensation your body recognizes, just like the muscle soreness after a workout that you come to deeply appreciate. More than a century ago, psychologist William James wrote something profound. The greatest goal of human beings is to make our nervous system an ally instead of an enemy. You were never incompetent. You are simply a machine running the wrong operating system left behind by an outdated education. And the good news is that operating system can be completely reinstalled. Out of the 5 methods I just shared, rewarding effort, placing rewards at the door, shrinking the entrance, designing your environment, or ending on a win, which one is the missing piece for you? Leave a comment down below. Let me know specifically, because I read every single comment. If this video resonated with you, hit like and send it to that friend you know, the one who still struggles every morning and has been beating themselves up for years. Subscribe to Deep Shift and turn on notification bells. We will continue to dissect many more hidden mechanics inside the human mind together. Thank you for spending your time here. I'll see you in the next video.